fine to do it. I just need to know. So what I'll do.
All right, all right.
Okay.
Okay. Bye.
You want me to start? Good morning, everyone. So we're here for our third town hall meeting We do have a series of questions that were submitted through the email. We'll review those questions first, and then I think the chat is open, that questions can be submitted, and we'll be taking questions through the chat as well. Anything else, Dr. Palmer, that you would like to add before we begin this session?
No, we thank the public for taking the time. I know this is a different time, early in the morning versus 2 evening, but we try to give a different group of people an opportunity to catch us before work. And as Mrs. Rabideau said, she's going to be moderating this session also and answering the questions that have been submitted, and we will then move from there and see if there's additional questions that may be asked of the public.
Okay, so first question here was, did we confirm anything with Mrs. Emer, like we had mentioned in one of our sessions, about how things will be handled if a sibling has a fever or other COVID symptoms? Yes, I did speak directly with Mrs. Emer, and each student responds to the set of screening questions on an individual basis. Their ability to come to enter school is based on the individual responses to temperature each day. So if a student did not have a fever and did not exhibit COVID symptoms, that student is able to come to school. Number 2, will school provide thermometers for families who do not have them and cannot access them? Will you make everyone aware of this? And I'm going to ask Mr. Sapp to respond to that.
So the district currently has no immediate plans to purchase thermometers for individual households. If a household is unable to take a student's temperature each day, they should notify the school the student attends. School will then make arrangements to have the student's temperature taken.
Thank you. How are random temperature checks going to occur? How often and who will be checked? Mr. Sapp, I'm going to defer to you again, please.
So the district is currently in the process of securing some additional thermometers and is finalizing a protocol for random temperature checks.
Next, kids are going to be carrying backpacks into classrooms, which is different than what our middle school and high school have looked like in the past. We all do have concern about kids being able to carry bags of things into school and safety. Are there going to be any type of backpack checks? I'm going to go over to Mr. Berry with that one.
I think we handle this the same as we would with backpacks any other time. We obviously assess our safety situation by the minute as we walk with the hallways and passing. Yes, there's an increased possibility of certain things in backpacks. They're large, they take up space, they could possibly even bump into people, but if we're although staying 6 feet away should keep that down. But just as always, we will take into consideration the safety of what's going on a minute by minute basis, assess those situations, stress it with teachers. And just like any time else with a backpack, if we get reports, we follow our code of conduct protocol and move forward with how to handle a situation that may be a safety issue. And just constantly reminding and educating students that they're what they're here for and why they're here. And it's, again, safety issue and our lockers not being able to be used at this point.
Exactly, thank you. Mr. Berry, you're going to be on the hot seat again because we have a question in regards to the student parking lot, how it's going to be handled. Someone out there checking on kiddos to make sure they're social distancing. Are students allowed to be bringing non-family members?
One thing that's great is our upgraded camera system does reach out to that parking lot. We can see that all the time. However, we have a teacher on duty there every morning at 7 a.m. That teacher, pre-COVID, would patrol the parking lot, again, for safety measures. This person's job in the morning gets adds a little bit of extra responsibility in social distancing. And that person will, just remind kids that, how they should be walking, make sure they're putting their masks on and staying six feet apart. That person assesses safety and has been doing it for a very long time. That position has been in place before these regulations are here. And also, I think to address the piece of where students are getting into cars from other families, I don't think that's something that we can police or enforce. However, when they do come on campus, the rules are the same for them. them as anybody else, and they out of the vehicle, they'll social distance in our building and wear masks.
Thank you. Mr. Sapp, has the district looked into a walk-through fever detector?
So the district has explored a variety of options for COVID-19 to include a variety of resources. We're particularly focused on PPE. However, these particular devices that are mentioned are very expensive and have mixed reviews regarding accuracy. So although we've looked at them, we are not considering purchasing them at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Sapp, I'm going to go with you again on this next one because it says, what happens if we have a positive case here at Peru School? Will the school inform all of the families, or is that going to the health department? And how is the contact tracing going to happen?
So the particular response is outlined within our district plan. With regards to the contact tracing, the COVID-19 testing and tracing is coordinated by the Clinton County Health Department.
And Mr. Berry, I'll answer the first one for us. Will CV Tech students still be bused to CV Tech? And the answer to that is yes. Transportation is going to occur to CV Tech. To piggyback on that, we have another CV Tech question. It says, I haven't seen any mention of CV Tech students in the Peru schedule. Will the 2-day schedule be full days with longer class blocks than usual, or are they still half days? So if you'd like to respond to the CV Tech situation, please, Mr. Berry.
At this point, CV Tech has created a schedule that puts their first year CV Tech students on their cohort A, which is typically a Monday or Tuesday, depending on the days of the week that we are in session, and their second year cohort on Thursday and Friday. We at Peru, the kids will be in the opposite cohort here at Peru in a remote setting. So if a student goes to CV Tech on Monday and Tuesday, they'll be remote in Peru on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, or cohort B. And just the opposite, if they're the second year CV Tech student, they would be on the remote schedule for cohort A.
Okay. Thank you. And I think also, does CV Tech also have some more information on their particular website about that if parents had further questions?
Yes, they do. CV Tech has more information on their website, and all of those, and being in contact with their administration there, they welcome questions as well.
Perfect. Thank you. So will students who get daily resource rooms still have it with a hybrid option the days they are in school and hopefully each day? And yes, the days that they are in school, they are certainly going to be getting resource room. And on remote days, we are looking at different ways to provide that to students at home. One possible way would be that a direct teacher contact, maybe via a Google Meet, or maybe even over the telephone, to provide some support that way. It will just really depend on what works with that teacher and that student and that family. So, next question. Many parents will continue to work regular hours, the 8 to 4, the 9 to 5, and are not available to instruct children during these hours. Is the school going to offer the opportunity for some evening lessons to students and maybe for some parents so that they can understand assignments to help their children? And I think this is mostly going to focus maybe for our primary children and maybe some in the intermediate. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Rawson.
So on Wednesdays, we're going to have live learning times and office hours for parents to check in with teachers. And this would go from up to 8 o'clock. The teacher in the individual classroom will share a schedule with you. He or she is going to survey parents to find out those best times for availability. Also, you can reach out to your teachers through Parent Square and set up an appointment with them to talk about those things. But each day, Seesaw messages will go out to all students, whether you're a 5-day remote or hybrid. And each parent needs to check in each day for those, because there's going to be an attendance reminder. All students every day have to check in for attendance. We are keeping attendance on everyone. But the short answer is we're gonna be sharing those videos out. Teaching videos, so parents will have a week turnaround time if you're a 5-day remote to access those materials, and kind of like we did an emergency remote. And they'll have a week to complete those assignments, upload them through Seesaw to the teacher.
Okay, thank you. And in the intermediate, did you have anything you'd like to add? I know it's a little different, your kids are a little older and they will have their devices this year. But back to the question of parents having to work all day and what supports might be available after hours.
Yeah, so saying additionally, that there will be opportunities on Wednesday when everyone is remote. We're going to have our teachers work with the parents in their classroom to find the times that work best for them. So those will be available. For the students that are full remote, they will have more intense availability on the days that they're not in school, or on the end of the week is what it looks like right now. And the kids, when they're home opposite the days that they're in school, they will have the opportunity, they'll have lessons posted, they can do them any time of the day that they want, and there will be some availability for just a check-in with someone to get some support if they need it. We'll be offering all types of trainings and things for parents outside of school hours. I know that Mr. Damiani already sent that information out, and there will be more coming, so yes.
Thank you. And I mean, I think we've heard from the middle school, high school is a little different. The children are, of course, a little bit more independent. Did you have anything you'd like to add, Mr. Storms?
Very similar to what Mrs. Campbell just said in regards to Wednesdays as an opportunity. We're flexible. Parents can still make appointments with teachers. And the important part is that the middle school students and high school students, but middle school students are joining in on those days. If they're full remote, they're joining in on the days of their schedule. And then also, it's going to be one of those things where we really need to establish home schedules. So establish schedules that the students are working in the Google Classroom and getting through those activities on those other days. So that's really important. A support that parents can do to help us help your students.
Thank you. And Mr. Barry?
Very, very similar in high school to that of the middle school. Again, the Wednesdays are built in for these reasons. And just as any other, again, pre-COVID or whatever we want to call the time period when we were bricks and mortar, teachers are available to be communicated with via email, and now that we have Parent Square app, and simple phone calls can also be made to teachers to set up support times.
Okay, thank you. And this question wasn't directed to a building, so it just says, will teachers be providing an actual virtual lesson to students via Zoom or Google Classroom? And so I think it's going to look a little different in each building. Sometimes live lessons will be offered, and sometimes lessons will be recorded for viewing, depending on the plan. Is there a building principal that wants to?
Well,
Michelle, Ms. Rawson will speak to that. Thank you.
Yeah, so a little bit of both. When I talked about the live learning time, that would be a live time where teachers would be available to provide reteachings and to dispel any misconceptions on the skills taught for the week, whether they're in person or remote. And likewise, as I had indicated before, in the 5-day remote learning and on the Wednesday, a recorded video will be shared. So we do that at the primary level, knowing that the children rely heavily on their parents to access that material. And so it helps families plan out when they're available to help their children access those. So a little bit of both.
Thank you. Anybody else want to add to that a little bit, or?
I think it's fair to say that we're definitely going to see an increased amount of either online live lessons, as well as the opportunity for recorded lessons. And I do feel after we've had these conversations with our teachers, you're going to see an increase from emergency remote learning into this coming school year. You're going to see more of that.
Okay, good. Yeah, putting that instructional responsibility in the hands of the teachers, I think is a key there.
I would also say at the high school, there will be live lessons, but also, and and it's probably in middle school as well, as the students are logging into the classroom, there's also the ability for the teacher to support the remote students as well through the communication through the Zoom, Google Meet, whatever avenue that we're choosing to do in that particular classroom, so that support's built in there as well. It's not just I picture it as not just a show, it's interactive.
Absolutely, thank you. And the next one, are drinking fountains going to be turned on or off during the school day? Mr. Sapp, would you like to?
So drinking fountains will be turned off throughout the pandemic. However, the water bottle refill stations that are spread throughout the district will remain on and will be a critical component of rehydration for students and faculty and staff.
Yeah, so I think we are encouraging that students will use water bottles. They'll bring a water bottle to school and bring it home daily to be cleaned. And then we also do, if your child forgets their water bottle that day, we do have some disposable cups that children can access, so they're not going all day without getting a drink of water. We do have a provision for that as well.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. What will mask breaks in the middle school and high school kind of look like, and what's the frequency of those? So we do have.
So we will definitely have mask breaks, and I think as the adults in the room all know, wearing a mask, as long as we're wearing them even for this type of a meeting, we realize that they're going to need them quite frequently. They're going to need them throughout the day, period by period, and they can take place in a variety of locations, depending on the teacher, but they will take place. So they'll take place in the classroom when students are seated at their seat before a cleaning, and then following the mask break, there'll be a cleaning of desks. That's one of the times. They also can take students outside for a mask break, but we definitely will be providing mask breaks on a period by period basis and controlled, so that it's in the classroom under the teacher's direction. But also we're going to take into consideration that sometimes students and people are going to need a mask break before the mask break is assigned. So there's going to be times too within that period where a student can say, I need a mask break, and the teacher will have accommodations for that. Maybe they'll step into the hallway to take that mask break, but those are some of the pieces we have in place for mask breaks in the middle school and high school.
Thank you. And the next one, what does lunchtime look like in the middle school and high school? Maybe we'll go over to Mr. Berry for that one.
Well, it's going to look completely different because we are going to deliver lunches into classrooms, look at our capacities of classrooms that are available during lunch periods, and have obviously supervision in those rooms, and the lunch will be brought to those rooms for students to eat in, and they will follow the protocol to remove their mask, eat their food, and have a much different social space, but a social space that one of the experiences of high school is going to lunch and kind of being able to unwind from the classes and things that you have, and I envision that space being in this, having that same tone, however, just looking completely different in classrooms, 6 feet apart, and following those certain rules.
Thank you. And the next one is the morning entering and afternoon dismissal process for students getting on and off buses and parent transportation. Basically, morning drop-off procedures are going to look very different than they have in the past, and they're also going to be very different at each building depending on where your child goes. So the details of each plan for each building, I believe, are outlined in our plan that's on the district website, and I think we've heard from building principals. They're going to be reaching out to parents directly about this. I think, Ms. Rawson, did you want to mention something?
Well, I just
Sure.
like to share
Go
that
ahead.
these plans are evolving daily.
Yes.
Prior to the first day students arrive on this campus, Thursday, September 10th, we will have plans out to parents. But at this point, each day, something new occurs. Somebody changes their mind about transportation or not, just the flow of numbers. There's just so many things that are changing that we are continually evolving these plans. So as soon as we have them and we know that they will be consistent for that opening day, we will get them to parents.
But I will say, the drop off, and pickup procedures, so in the past, we've asked parents to enter the building, sign their children in. We're trying to, limit the number of people coming in. So one of the things that I think is noteworthy for parents is that we're looking to streamline that and for efficiency and get parents in and out without them having to really leave their vehicles. So we're coming up with a system with a lot of staff being able to take these children from the vehicle when the parent stops and funnel them into the appropriate door. Because the key for us is to keep cohort groups together and keep the flow going so that we can maintain that social distancing. So the plan is evolving, like Mrs. Campbell had said, and details of the plans will be shared.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, definitely an evolving process, but we are going to do our best to make it very smooth and make it as safe as possible for our students and then for our parents that are kind of having to drive and navigate through our parking lots. We're working on the flow here. I think this is a particular high school question, Mr. Berry, about students roaming hallways to change classes. What's that going to be like?
It's gonna be a little different. So what, at the end of each period, we've discussed with the teachers that the best manner to do it is at the end of the period, let students go in waves. Most likely our capacity in each room is going to be around 12. So even 3 at a time spaced out 30 seconds allows the hallways to not have the mass exodus that we normally do, and allow the students to arrive at their next destination in a little bit of a spaced out manner. There will be arrows on the hallway floor indicating direction. Some hallways are 2-way, and we'll have to sort of keep students in lanes to keep their distance. Some hallways are 1-way, for example, around the auditorium, the tech labs, and the music room all become a traffic flow that is 1-way. And students will abide by those, again, with the 6 feet apart, and we'll just, and certainly teachers will be around to help assist them in their travel, and not in a punitive way, but just reminding what 6 feet looks like, and constantly being conscious of our travel.
All right, and I guess I'm up to question number 18. Thank you, Mr. Ray. Will there be different start times in the morning? And I think what we've decided as a district is the student start and end learning times for the students are not changing. The only change in times could be that the high school is not offering 10th period for students due to transportation and tracking issues. But the basic start time for students in the middle school, high school, intermediate, and primary are all remaining the same start and end times.
The only caveat to that is the drop-off time is going to change, and more information will be coming out on that. But the window of time to drop off, or the beginning of the drop-off time, will change. So it's going to be that right now in the high school and middle school, 7:15 is that drop-off time. You can drop off before that time.
Okay, and that will help with students not congregating in areas.
Correct.
If students are entering the building at 7:15 and going directly to their first period class.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And anything on the other side of campus about the drop-off time in the morning for students we'd like to share?
I anticipate it'll be
The same,
roughly the same.
yeah.
Okay, okay, and more information will be coming as we get those details worked out.
Yes.
And, can see how many students we're actually thinking of, so we know how much of a window we need to plan for, because that's really what we're waiting on, is to get all of our lists compiled and all of that data, right?
Right, because when you think about the A and the B days, it's really looking at the number of students on those individual days, that how much traffic you
Sure.
have to monitor and guide the flow. So all of those things are relevant. And so we're working on a plan, a finalized plan actually, that we'll be sharing out soon.
Okay, thank you. Will children have physical education? Anybody
I'll take that one.
Oh, Dr. Palmer, thank you. Are children gonna have PE this year?
As everybody said, it's a constant fluid movement. It'll change throughout the course of the years. We learn more information. The children will receive physical education. It's in their schedule. But how it looks will look different in each building. And the follow-up will be that we will have definitely some virtual opportunities for kids also. So I think an emphasis this year will be lifetime sports in the middle and high school. And the elementary will still be the fundamental components of physical education, moving through the physical, whether it's psychomotor, cognitive, those domains, but also through the pieces of locomotor skills, walking, skipping, jumping, leaping, galloping, those things we'll still do. But the way it looks in the physical space may be different. The optimal piece on that too is this 12-foot social distance because of kids' active movement. The district will make every effort to make sure that's adhered to also.
Thank you. How do we pick up our children's Chromebook and what's the process for that? And I do know that we are hoping to have Chromebook pickups scheduled for each building prior to the start of school. I think more details are going to follow. I don't think we have a concrete information yet on that. As like we said, everything is still evolving, but each building principal is working on a plan for their building to get those out.
It's safe to say that will happen before the first day of school.
Perfect, thank you. What does the hybrid model 2 look like for my child that is in a remote setting and not going to school? How are they being educated? So it is our plan that while children are on a remote day, they're still going to get education. It's going to look different in each building. There are details in the plan. If any of the building principals wanted to add.
So are we speaking about the Wednesday and a parent has selected hybrid model? Is that what this is?
No, I think it's remote is what they're referring to, right? Remote.
So yeah, I think there's two, there's a little bit of confusion, I think, sometimes when this question is asked, because we're trying to determine, so there's two ways students are remote. Students can only come to school in person 2 days a week. So the other 3 days, those children are hybrid remote. Then there are families that have chosen to keep their children home 5 days a week and be fully remote within the hybrid model so that their children don't have to come to school at all. So basically, if your child comes to school in person 2 days a week, the days they're not in school, they will have lessons and assignments from their teachers. This is in the elementary. I'll let the high school and the middle school speak to their model. They will have lessons and assignments from their teachers that they have to do on the days that they're not in school that will review the material that they would have done in school. So in a school day when we didn't have COVID, there was a blend of new instruction and review and preparation in what we call like an anticipatory set for what would happen later in future lessons. And so basically what we've done is we've made sure that the stuff that's happening in person are the hands-on discussions, opportunities for students to get feedback about what they're doing in the moment, new instruction that really requires that connection between teacher and student. And then on the days that they're not in school, they're doing those independent practice things that they would have done had we had a full week. They may be doing some previews of things to come. There will definitely be some review built in, and there will also be some opportunity to connect with a professional if they need some assistance. So that's if you're coming to school 2 days a week. Then the other part of that is everybody who comes to school 2 days a week is remote on a Wednesday of a 5-day week. And that will look, again, you'll have a lesson, there'll be a live learning time with the teacher at some point in the day, and there will be an opportunity for parents to connect with teachers in the evening if that's what works for those families. Then there's the full remote, the families, and so that looks a little different in the elementary. They'll have 2 days that will look very much like the review, the small, minor, new material, independent practice. And then they will have the 3 days of remote where they will have live learning times, they will have lessons, they will have connections and contact with the teachers. They won't remote into a class per se, but they will have opportunity for live connection with a teacher.
Thank you.
High school is similar, in middle school, again, if you are in the hybrid 2 and you're in a cohort and you're coming to school in person 2 days a week, on the other 3 days, the teacher will set up activities that go out and have to come back for attendance purposes, but we'll set up activities on those other 3 days. And there's sort of 2 schools of thought in this, that the teacher can flip the classroom where on those remote days, the students will get input activities, new information, and then when they are live, the teacher answers the questions and goes into the guided and independent practice with the students in that setting, along with the remote kids, doing the same thing. So there's that school of thought, and then there's also the school of thought that you would bring the new material while you're live, and then the students would practice in the other 3 days. That's going to be dependent on the classroom. So that's if a student is live and, in the hybrid 2 model in a cohort live in person. If the remote, the practice is going to be the same as we're having students remote into the classroom, so that they have an opportunity to work with teachers if they do need support, that they are certainly, if they're a full remote, they're not in person. However, they do have the opportunities to get feedback, to engage in the independent and guided practice in the classroom, or receive the input activities and then do the independent practice on the other 3 days.
And what happens if a family decides that remote learning isn't working and they want their child's schedule to go back to in school if we're doing the hybrid kind of model? Is that something a family can do? And yes, a family can decide that remote learning isn't working for their child. And we do have the ability to educate your child if we're in that hybrid 2 model. Their child is assigned to classes and could be in classes. We encourage families to keep programs as consistent as possible for children, because flip-flopping back and forth, changing from in-person to remote is going to be difficult. If you do need to make a change from the remote to back in person, that's fine. We welcome that. You should contact your building principal to guide you through that process at this point. And next, if my child is 5 days remote, when do they get to speak with their teachers? When will they have live instruction and not just videos or other things to occupy their time? So I think it's a little bit different in each building. Mr. Storms, would you like to go ahead?
Well, it is definitely different in each building. One of the things, if they're a full remote student, they are required in the high school and middle school, they're required on their particular day, either the A day or the B day, depending on what they're scheduled, they're required to join that lesson. So that's going to be live instruction right there. On the other days, there may be additional activities that they have to either watch and or complete. And then Wednesdays is that same opportunity for them to reach out to their teacher. So they definitely will have those live opportunities as well. So I think that's an important aspect.
I think that kind of piggyback on is that, and teachers have been they've been given time to prepare. They've been in our buildings working as teaching teams, and really thinking about that the things that they're doing on those off days or in the remote situation are not just an occupation of time. They are necessary to meet the power standards that the teachers have worked very hard on highlighting and making sure that these are the things that are going to lead for student success, going back to even assessment of not the lack of, but possible missing of fundamentals due to the emergency remote setting from March. So I would say that it's not just going to be an occupation of time, that it's going to be essential that the students engage in the off-day activities in order for those students to meet the standards, to make sure that their fundamentals are in place, to make sure that they are hitting those benchmarks and progressing as students.
Piggybacking back on what you're talking about, it's so critical that parents understand that we're in the hybrid 2 model. People have chosen to take their students and go full remote, but that means we're still taking attendance, so middle school and high school students especially must log in at their scheduled time. And we'll be looking for those students during those particular times. So if it's a first period class, that's at 7:28. So it's really important students are signing in at those times. It's not like emergency remote learning where students got to pick and choose when they were gonna actually complete things. They're gonna need to be there. So it's gonna be really important.
And I also wanted to add that's why we've really added these live learning times. So when we were in emergency remote learning, you learned a lot, right? And so staff worked so hard to make that the best experience, make the best out of that thing. And so as a team, we've all worked together and added these live learning times. But I also want to add that I know that teachers try to be available too, outside of the times, the live learning time. If parents need to reach out to a teacher to set up an individual time, that's a possibility too, right? So they just have to reach out to the teacher and make that appointment with them. But those live learning times will be provided to help students.
Thank you. So that was it for our questions that had been submitted to us prior to this morning that we had. I don't know if there are questions coming in on the chat at all. Mr. Berry, do you have that app available?
I do, and there are no questions in the app today.
Okay. Dr. Palmer, I'll turn it back over to you.
I appreciate those who are able to join us today. If there are additional questions and as you're reflecting on it or going through our plan that's located on our website, feel free to email us and we'll definitely get that out. We'll have a document on our website by the end of the week with the questions that have been asked so people can reflect on those. We thank you for joining today.